Welcome back to Prairie Wings. I'm Merle, and I am working on a 69 Chevelle today. It is a beautiful car. In another video, I talked about the beautiful rims that are on it with some BF Goodrich radial TAs, and I want to highlight that radial TA. This car was originally designed for Bias-ply tires. Having Bias-plies go to radials, well, they want different alignment specs. So how do we deal with that? Well, let's take a look. We have some original stamped steel control arms. We're going to have to deal with those. I use a ton of products from these guys. Performance World, I'm not sponsored by. I'm sure it would be nice. But anyway, I am going to open this up. So these are very good pieces, and they definitely have someone's budget in mind. They're not going to break the bank. We'll just take a look at what we have in this box. And also I will reveal, when you purchase their products, nice pieces. So this is the upper control arms. Very beautiful pieces. Kind of strange, isn't that? Lower control arms. Beautiful pieces. How the heck do I put this together? Well, that's what I wanted to reveal. They really don't come with instructions on a lot of the products. So I thought, you know, in a normal shop, you would get instructions and you'd be able to assemble this because you've done a lot of these, but some DIY guys might not have. So I'm just going to do a real quick video on how to change the control arms in this. Starting out with the easy part, I have a hoist, so it's probably easier than a lot of people, but what you want to do is jack the front of the car up and get the frame sitting on a jack stand. Whether you're on a hoist or whether you are on the ground on your back, that's what you're going to do. You're going to want to jack it up underneath the control arms and put stands under each side, or jack it up under the middle, under that control arm there. And yeah, just get some stands under it so she's really secure. This job reminds me, every time I do ball joints, it reminds me, I'm doing this out of order, of course, because I love cotter pins. Reminds me of when I was young. The very first time I did ball joints was with my dad. Now, my dad was like the hardest working guy you could ever imagine. I just can't believe how hard he worked. We were really poor, and my dad was a heavy-duty mechanic, but he could fix anything. He could build anything. He could fix anything. And we were working on his truck, and I was out in the shop. I don't know how old I was. I was really, really young. Like, I'm talking, I don't know, I'd guess 8 or 9, and we had to do the ball joints on his truck. So what we have to do, and you'll see, we're going to be smacking this with a hammer to pop the ball joints loose. And he was pretty crippled up. He had arthritis real bad. His hands didn't work real good, stuff like that. So he got me to hold a very big, well, it was actually a drive shaft from, I believe it was a Model T, something like that. A solid shaft, like they're heavy duty, solid heavy shaft. And he's getting me to hold this thing on the ball joint, and he's swinging the hammer, hitting the end of this thing, and he's got a sledgehammer. And he's not a little man. He's a tough, stout guy. And of course, you know, I'm a little scared, but you know, he hits it and he's holding back a little bit just to make sure I'm going to hold it when he whacks it. Well, I'm assuring him that I got this bar, and he winds up and he just smacks the bar, but I'm pretty sure I moved because of fear. Hammer glances off the bar, hits me square in the knee. I wasn't laughing that day, but I wasn't going to cry. I did not cry. I have to tell you, I wanted to cry, but I picked that bar back up and I put it back onto the ball joint and I said, hit it again. And Dad did not want to hit it again. He's like, no, 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 no. I'm like, oh no, it's my fault. Hit it again, hit it again. You know what? We ended up getting it apart, but I tell you what, that was one of the most painful blows of the knee that I can ever remember. So we'll get the sway bar link out, and it's a 3/8 bolt, so that is actually 9/16 socket and a wrench. And when we get the other side out, we'll be able to just pull this out. Sometimes you got to fight them out. Shouldn't be too bad. I got the other side apart. Wasn't too bad. Now, on this, if this is a greasy, old, rusty unit, there's a good chance probably going to have to cut this out. But it doesn't matter anyways, because their new kit, this gets replaced as part of the kit. Now, depending on how many kajillion times your ball joints have been replaced since 1969, these top ones on this car, top one is a 3/4 inch wrench, and I'll wiggle that loose off camera. And the bottom one, well, it's a 7/8, which there's some grunt to it and there's not much room to swing a wrench in here. You could loosen the wheel and turn the wheels, like unlock the steering and turn the wheels, but this is going great, no big deal. So I'll get these backed off and we'll come back. So the bottom of your shock is just going to have 2 bolts in there. You're going to need a 1/2 inch socket for these. I prefer to use an impact to get them out. Sorry for bumping the camera. Trying to make it more realistic for you. Shock, she's out. We could be unlocking the steering to get travel, but I don't know if we will get enough travel by unlocking the steering, because we have to swing this wheel, this knuckle really far, probably farther than the steering is going to allow us, I think, on this to be able to break the ball joints. Plus, we might have to hammer from this side, and this would be in the way. So I'm choosing to just separate this steering arm here. And then this is going to be done very similar to how the rest of this is, which maybe what we should take a little bit of a look at is this here. So this is the new lower control arm that we're putting in here. And they got a cotter pin in that's kind of slightly bent. We'll just straighten that out. But the key thing that I want to show you is that all of these ball joints, including the steering knuckles, are big tapers. And so this is tapered a lot. And so what happens is when you tighten the ball joints in, the taper is actually what holds these in. So in order to break these loose Lots of people use pickle forks and stuff. You really mess up the rubbers. Can't reuse them. On these, it doesn't matter. We're not reusing them. But on this end here, you'd have to buy new parts if you wanted to do that. And all we need to do is give this a really quick offset. We just need to give it a quick boonk to pop that taper out. So I'll just show you an example of how I do that. Now you don't want to take that nut right off, just loosen it off. And I'm gonna go and get my hammer. All I want to do is hit it here on this actual part where the taper goes in to give it that offset. You don't want to play around with this. You want to really hit it. Once you give it a good old pop, they just pop out. And now, of course, we have room here, and we'll go over how your vehicle is going to want to kill you now. So if we take a look, the safety part of this was, well, the shock was bolted in and bolted to the top. It would hold that spring together. We have this ball joint right here, and we have this ball joint down here. And what's happening right now is this ball joint and this control arm is bolted in up top here. And the bottom ball joint through this knuckle, well, this spring is trying to lift as much as, well, the corner of this car with an engine in it, and it's hanging here. So this has massive, massive downward force. So what we want to do is we want to smack these ball joints apart. We want to make sure these nuts are on so they can't go flying, but we want to have a jack underneath to catch it. Because I'm going to be nailing this with a hammer to break that ball joint loose, this with a hammer to break this one loose, and then this whole thing is going to be absolutely loose. We can pull the components out, and then we're going to have to slowly let the jack down so that this spring doesn't fly out and decide to kill somebody. So all of this needs to be very controlled. You got to be very careful when you're doing this. And yeah, it is this part of the job. If you're not careful, you could really hurt yourself. But if you are careful, there's nothing to be scared of at all. It is pretty straightforward. Once the spring tension is released, it goes away instantly. So it's not like this spring is 10 feet long. It just has spring tension under the part that it's bound to. And right now, it's sitting at extent all the way down. So there's not much more to go down before the spring is released. But you wouldn't want to just blow this apart and let it go because it's a spring and it will fly out. I have the jack just underneath the lower ball joint. This one's going to suck to get at with this hoist deck so close. I'm not sure how I'm actually going to get to this. It might be from the other side. And then this one up top here is going to be pretty easy to get. What I need to do is pop these loose. And again, I'm catching it with this. Okay, that's the top one snapped out. These tie rod ends, by the way, are 5/8 wrench. Okay, I got as much of the weight off on this jack as I can. Now here's a disadvantage to doing this on this hoist is my jack is actually limited in its ability to travel up high enough. And so I'm in a position that I don't really like because this doesn't have all of the weight. It's solid on there, but what you want to do is make sure that you have a jack lifting this up so that this is actually floppy in here, which this isn't totally floppy. It has some tension. Now, I took the brake line off, which if you are not wanting to do that because you're not changing the brakes, you wouldn't want to take that brake line off. But with how we're dealing with this one, I took the brake line off. I'm going to be changing that. That's not part of this video. But right now, I'm just going to pull this off, and it's going to spring you a little bit, probably. Hopefully not too bad. Because if you jack this up higher, it takes weight of the car off, which is going to compress the spring a little bit more. Putting this together, we're probably going to have to use a spring compressor, which I have, to get this back together. Maybe not. We'll see. Just make sure your fingers aren't in there. So, not much tension on it. But this was held up against here. So, I'd say there was probably roughly 1/2 of an inch of tension that this could have gone up higher to have not had that spring out. Again, experience in doing this says that I can do that, because when you're younger than I am and dumber than I am right now, you just give her and stand back. And I learned to get away with a couple things, that being one of them. So if you weren't changing this, the inner fender would be in here, and you'd have to figure out a way to support this off to the side. But we're just pulling it out. All right, I'm not a big fan of how my air jack lowers. So as you can see, I threw my floor jack up there because it's less clunky. It should come down a lot more even. And it'll be a balancing act back and forth, because you definitely want to be safe when you're dealing with a spring that lifts the corner of a car. Just hooked on the grease nipple there, so just make sure we clear that. And it's pretty much down. If you were using just a floor jack, you wouldn't have to pry anything at all, because you'd be able to lower it more. In this case, I'm not. So the spring is going to be a little, I guess it seems freaky, but it's not a big deal because all the energy is pretty much spent. It will spring out a little bit. And it's going to suck for putting back in, being that there is pressure on this. I'm probably going to figure out a different way to do this. To put it back in. Because as you can see, there's still a lot of unspent energy. So when I go to put this back together, I'm going to make sure I have more clearance with this. So if we take a look, this flat goes up to the top. The rounded one is in the bottom. And if you look in here, the spring that was probably an inch, but maybe a little less than an inch of energy. Still enough that if you weren't prepared for that to come out at you like that, probably need a new change of underwear. All right, so if we look at this with this spring topped right out in here, even with this down as far as it would go, which gives us, you know, more travel in, but probably an inch of clearance further here, you're still going to be having this spring fly out at you no matter what. So when we go to put this together, we're actually going to capture this spring, suck it together, and then put it in there. But we're prepared for that. We have the tools. Now this upper control arm has been sitting in this position. The bushings are dried out. Everything is tightened up. And it's going to fight you. You have to push the control arm in towards the vehicle to get it off the studs that are in the frame. And that is going to bring up another interesting point. But what you're going to want to do is you want to give yourself some movement in this before you do anything. So you're going to take a pry bar and you're going to try and rock those bushings in there so that when you're pushing it in, this isn't going to be sitting against the frame. All right, now here's what I'm talking about here. These, if this had an exhaust manifold off, these would just slide right in and come out. And the alignment shims are out of there now. And anyways, with a header on, well, I'm going to have a bit of an issue getting this out of here. So what can I do? These aren't normal bolts, so you don't want to get on the head of these and start cranking. They actually have a splined shaft on them so that they're pulled into that hole. If you turn them, you're going to make the alignment guy really unhappy because they're just going to spin in here. As well, if you are going to pull these out, so they're a lot of the time quite loose, so you can just take and tappy tap, do whatever you have to, or you could take and remove the headers. My option is I'm going to take and lightly persuade those out without spinning them. I guess I should show you, so I'll try and do this all at once, but these usually, like, they're really not in that hard, so I have a pry bar that fits in there, and you shouldn't have to do, I'm just gonna spin this around, you shouldn't have to do really too much. Like, I'm talking, you wouldn't even mark your header up, and they just well, the whole thing pivoted there, but that pushed out of the tin holding it in. It is that simple. Now that it's loose, it's just going to go in and out. So you can pull the head of that out from inside, which is right here. So I'll pull it out and I'll show you. All right, here's that bolt. If you look really close, it's got that little spline on there, that raised part that just pushes in, and it just mushes into that hole and holds it from turning. Now, it's getting tougher and tougher to find parts. My plan for this is I'm going to clean it up really nice, push it back in, and move forward. There won't be any issue with that. Here's the press piece that we took out. Worn out bushings. You can see they're all dry rotted. And here is the new piece we're putting in. Very nice quality. Yeah, it's a very sturdy unit, and it's going to correct those alignment angles to run our radials. So I'm going to slip that in. As you can see, someone did a bit of touch-up work on the chassis on this, and pretty hard to do underneath that pressed tin piece. So now would be the time that you'd want to take your wire brush and do some dress-up work to this. The rattle can restoration is done, so I just took and wire brushed it up. Of course, they brushed on some thicker undercoating, so it doesn't really match. But you know what? For what we're doing with this is going to be great. So I just pulled out the bottom control arm, this pressed control arm. So these are 1/2-inch bolts that go in here, so 3/4 inch wrench. We're going to be just cleaning these up and reusing them. And we have the new lower control arm, and you know, it's nice. They have zip ties in here to hold the bushing in so that none of this comes apart during shipping. But what I'm going to do is pop those in, and then we're going to end up getting the spring set up in here and put back together. A quick note before we carry on though, if we look at this cross piece in here, you can see that it is offset back. Now, in my mind, the only way that this would work is if we were to put this in where this is facing the outside of the car, because it goes behind the frame and the studs go through this. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow this top control arm, That's where this is located. The bottom one just has the bushings. But what it's going to do is it's going to push this top control arm out further so that we can achieve more camber. And if we were to put it the other way, it would be pulling it in. And if this ends up being where we need to adjust more, well, we can add more shims. So to start, we are just going to have it rotated this way. And I'm pretty sure that's the way they should be. Like I said, there's no instructions with these. Can't find anything online on it. So hopefully this video helps with that. Another note that you're going to run into, and this is with these control arms as well as any other aftermarket ones, is this is the bottom cross member of the car. And these are just stamped metal pieces. And when the lower control arms get put in, these get squished in. And you're not going to be able to get in the new control arm. I don't know if I can do this one-handed, but you take the biggest thumb wrench you can find and you just can give these a bit of a tweak, which I'm going to have to do an adjustment here to make it tighter. And you can just give those a bit of a tweak, and that should be enough to make them fit. Earlier in the video, you saw me just pop the spring out and it goes flying a little bit, which the compression on it wasn't huge. Now, this bottom arm, I have it swung almost all the way down. It can go a little bit more, but this job would be impossible to do without spring compressors. I actually hate spring compressors, but this is my favorite set. I don't know what brand they are. I've had them for years, but they have locking pins in them, and they lock that spring in really good. And I compressed it enough now where I have it almost sitting in the back of the saddle there. And once that happens, I will be jacking up on this to hold this in place. That spring is getting compressed in, but I thought I would just take and give you a quick note too. You can't really see it in there. The camera angle doesn't work too well, but on this spring, the bottom of it is just a total round normal spring. And in the bottom of here, this has a groove that accepts it where the end of the spring actually lands. The top of this has got a flattened, and there is no insulator in the top of these cars. So this just sits up flat around the receiver that's in the top of this. I shoved the original shims in the top, but the alignment shop is going to have to fix that. So if you look at that upper control arm now, it is really free. No big deal to that swinging back and forth. It's a greasable bushing. The bottom ones, however, are not. So these bolts you do not want to tighten until you have the weight of the car on. And that will kind of hold it in the more correct place. They will move after suspension moves, they'll settle in. Now, in order to get that spring in, I pulled out these end links that come with this kit. You probably want to take note of how this works. So if you see there's a taper there, well, that goes ball against ball, and that gives you extra travel on these sway bar end links. Pull it out so you don't have to fight that spring over top of it. All right, things we have to do here now is we have to get this sway bar end link in. Now, this again is in the kit. Really nice pieces. Bolt is only going to go, wow, onto the floor. Now, the bolt is only going to go in one way, and that will be from the inside because the ball joint's on the other side. And then these little spacers, the flat goes against the bracket. This little bracket's going to go in. Then we're going to put the taper towards the ball. Push it through the bracket. Washer. And our lock nut. Now, they don't have a torque spec for this, so I'll look up the torque spec for that size of bolt, and we'll go close to that. And on the top, what you're going to have to do is get it close because you have to line up both sides at the same time. So I have the other side sitting in there, and Now I have it on. Get the rubber washer and nut on top. Now the top is got rubber bushings in it, so we'll probably go, I don't know, 1.5 ugga-duggas on that one. And I'm not going to be able to get a torque wrench in here, so the ugga-dugga system will work there as well quite nicely. Okay, and that is 1.5 ugga-duggas up top here. So when the weight is on the car, the angles of this will all be a lot nicer. So we'll end up getting that rechecked once the weight is down. The weight's off. That sure looks a lot better for angles. We don't want to over tighten this. Just want to make sure that we aren't going to have play in those bushings. So it's squishing out a little bit. So about 1/2 ugga-dugga, if that works in the ugga-dugga books. Now this angle in here looks really good, really straight. You could potentially, if you felt like it, loosen this off a bit and screw this up. These are adjustable. I don't mind where they were the way they came. They're looks like quite far in. So you want to make sure that when you're done this, you tighten that lock nut on the bottom adjuster. Okay, now that the weight of the vehicle is down, we want to make sure that we torque all of these bolts. So those are 80 foot-pounds, all 4 of them. And you want to make sure that you're going over everything when you're looking at this as well, that you didn't forget something. The other thing that I'd like to note is you gotta fill these grease nipples with grease. So do all the ball joints and do the tie rod ends. Don't miss any grease nipples. Okay, time to put the shocks back in this. Now they, you want, when you do it, you make sure you got your washer and your bushing up top. Now these are in pretty decent shape. They are sandwiched a little bit, but I'm not too worried about that. The shocks are in good shape. Now the shocks, when we took them out, the old control arm had a nut on a spring that held it in there, and that stuff is no longer being used. These control arms actually have a threaded, the bottom is pretty thick on these and they're threaded, but it looks like the holes have a bit of powder coating in them. So that's a really good note. I'm going to grab a thread chase and we're going to clean those. Okay, I have a thread chase here, and the difference between a thread chase and a tap is a thread chase. What it does is it doesn't cut new threads. It actually, if there's any threads that are galled up or dirty or anything like this, you're going to end up having this chase, and this is 5/16 chase, by the way. We'll just clean those out and not cut new threads. The last thing you want to do is take and mess these threads up. Now this you could look at as a negative thing or a positive thing. I kind of look at it as positive because yeah, they didn't clean the threads out after they coated these, but man, they got a nice thick coating. These control arms, if I could figure out my life, these control arms would last a long time because they do have such a thick coating on. So I'm gonna take and clean out all these holes, and that's, make sure you lube when you're doing this operation. Use lots of it. Like butter. I'll clean the rest of these holes up and we'll get back at it. All right, we'll try this again. Feed the shock up, make sure you get the top through the hole where it goes. The torque spec for the bottom of these is 20 foot-pounds. And the top one says that it is 8. So definitely make sure you're using a torque wrench on these. I'm going to get this torqued up and the top one together. We started with these press control arms, and there's another video on the drum brakes that we have now got off. So if you wouldn't mind, take a look at that. Anyways, here comes the front end. We have now a nice set of tubular control arms, and we can get our steering angles corrected for the radial tires that are now on this car. Check and check. A couple more things off the list. I have a ton of work to do on this car. Hopefully you'll watch those videos as well. I'm going to be doing some rear disc brakes on this as well, and I'm going to be using the same budget brakes as these ones. And I'm also going to be doing a more expensive rear suspension setup in this, but I'm also going to do a video on a stock looking rear sway bar, and hopefully it'll still look kind of stock underneath the back of this thing. This car is really sweet and it's kicking old school. It's got a small block Chevy, and that's what it's going to be getting when it's redone. So the whole thing about the front end, I would definitely be using this front end in another build. I mean, you could put some different stickers on this if you wanted, and no one would know the difference. The front end is legit. It is a good front end. And I am hoping that I covered everything in getting these in that would help you put this front end in. That's the whole point of this video, is to help that out. So if I've missed something and you have some questions about that front end stuff, or if you want to tell me that I did it wrong, well, I welcome those comments as well. I really appreciate the time that you took. I enjoy doing these videos. And if you don't mind, please like, share, and subscribe.